Welcome to this ballot issues presentation by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. This forum will cover statewide ballot issues and ballot issues for voters that are part of the St. Vrain Valley School District, the city of Longmont, and the town of Erie. I'm Stacy Johnson, volunteer member and voter service director for the League of Women Voters of Boulder County. For today's presentation, the panel consists of Judy Mars-Dixon, our ballot issues coordinator for the Boulder League, and team members Peggy Leach, co-president of LWVBC, Linda Haltman, and Deborah Hayes. Helping us with Spanish language interpretation is Maria Alicia Fuller Martinez and Valentina Sarmiento Cruz. For those in the audience not familiar with the League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights, and we also work to ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. To remain nonpartisan, the League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. Although we are nonpartisan, we work to empower voters and defend democracy through advocacy, education, and through litigation at the local, state, and national levels. We will begin with a presentation of the state ballot issues, followed by the St. Vrain Valley School District ballot question, and then the ballot questions before voters in the city of Longmont and the town of Erie. Today's forum does not include any outside speakers who are in favor or opposed to any of the ballot measures. The presenters will take a few minutes to explain each ballot measure, and then they will address questions submitted by you through the Q&A function of this Zoom session. If you are unable to submit your question through the Q&A function in time before we move on to the next section of the forum, please email me at voterservice@lwvbc.org. To get us started, here is Judy Mars-Dixon.
Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. There are, as you probably know, there are many issues on the ballot this year. So the state has 14 issues, and we're going to talk about each of those, as well as RTDs, and then we'll move on to St. Vrain, Longmont, and Erie. So, and as we will move from one to the other, taking questions in between each one. However, if you do have a question as we're discussing the next issue, go ahead and put it in the Q&A and we'll pick it up. All right, so the point is we want to get your questions answered, whether it be right now or whether it be if you email. So let's get started. All right, so 7 of the 14 state questions are referred by the state legislature, and 7 are citizen initiatives. All right, and 1 is referred by the RTD Board of Directors, and half of Colorado will vote on that one, including us. Amendments, there are 7 of them, and that means a proposal to change the Colorado Constitution. Propositions, there are 7, and that means a proposed change to state statute. Regarding the regarding the propositions, 5 of them are proposals to change the state statute. 2 of them, and they're the ones that are lettered, not numbered, they are proposals to change the code, the tax code. All right, so with all that, here we go. So we're going to do the amendments first, and the first one is Amendment G, and that is to modify the property tax exemption for veterans with disabilities. So this is referred by the state legislature, and since it is an amendment, it does require 55% of the vote in order to pass. What it does, if it's passed, is it will reduce the property tax for veterans with a significant service-related disability. And the way it does that is it takes the first $200,000 of their homes of value and reduces it by 50%. If this passes, 3,700 vets who are now not eligible for this tax exemption would become eligible. So currently, only vets with 100% disability are eligible. This proposal proposes to expand that such that veterans with a military disability that are not 100% disabled could be eligible. Now, some of us know this by the homestead exemption, primarily for seniors, if you will. That does not change. Those who are currently eligible, it remains the same. So the argument for this is that this provides tax relief for disabled veterans who are unable to work. The argument against it is that property taxes could be harder to administer, given that given that the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs is the one that determines the level of disability. All right, so that's Amendment G. Questions about that one?
Nothing yet.
All right, so Peggy?
All right. So now we'll do Amendment H, which is judicial discipline procedures and confidentiality. This again was referred by the legislature, and since it's an amendment, it requires 55% of the vote. It's resulting from 2021 allegations about judicial misconduct. And there were a lot of things that were dismissed and a lack of transparency. And so there was an interim committee by the state legislature that came up with some recommendations. And one of the recommendations requires a change to the Constitution. So currently, the Supreme Court can dismiss a case or hide decisions from public view. This would remove the state Supreme Court from this process totally. And instead, a new system would be set up that would include a body of people. So that's 4 citizens, 4 district court judges, and 4 attorneys. And so then when there's a charge of judicial misconduct, they would randomly select one of the citizens, one of the district court judges, and one of the attorneys to hear that case. And then it can't be kept confidential, or at least there's more control over whether it can be confidential. So a pro is that Colorado judges should not have direct influence and oversight over the discipline of their colleagues. And a con is that the current system works. Judges understand how to review cases, hold hearings, and make impartial decisions. All right, are there any questions on Amendment H?
Nothing so far.
All right, I'll move on to Amendment I. Constitutional bail exemption for first-degree murder. Again, referred by the legislature and quite overwhelmingly. And it requires 55% to pass because it's amending the Constitution. So in 2020, Colorado repealed the death penalty. And in the Constitution, it says that all defendants have a right to post bond with the exception of capital offenses. And capital offenses are defined as those that could be punished by death. So since we removed the death penalty, judges are no longer able to deny bail to first-degree murder suspects. So with this amendment, they would at least have the discretion to allow them to post bail or not. So a pro is restores a long-standing legal precedent that was inadvertently eliminated with the repeal of the death penalty. And a con, persons are considered innocent until proven guilty. Judges should have the discretion on bail decisions. All right, are there questions on Amendment I?
No questions on I.
Right, Judy?
All right, so now we are to Amendment J, which is repealing the constitutional definition of marriage. This amendment would repeal the language in the Colorado Constitution now. That language states that marriage is a union between one man and one woman. So if you vote yes on Amendment J, you are voting to take this language out. And if you vote no, then you're voting to leave this language in. Now, this one, although it passes with a majority vote because it's a question to repeal. So that's a majority vote versus the 55% in order for it to pass. So the proposers here are attempting to protect against a future Supreme Court's attempt to overturn same-sex marriage. In 2014 and 2015, same-sex marriage was legalized, and in 2022, Congress lifted the ban on same-sex marriage. All right, so that's an argument for it, is to protect same-sex marriage from a future Supreme Court decision. A con would be that marriage should stay between one woman and one man, and that a future Supreme Court could in fact rule that way. All right, that's Amendment J. Questions on that? Or if you have questions on G, H, or I, we'll take them.
Well, we don't have any questions.
All right, I'm going to go to K. K is a little different vein here. This is to modify modify the Constitution election deadlines. The deadlines that are in the current Constitution, that is. So there's really, and a yes vote moves these three dates that we're going to talk about up, and a no vote keeps everything as is. Requires 60 or 55% of the vote to pass. So here are the three things. First, signatures for a petition, those need to be in 1 week earlier than currently. Currently, it is 3 months prior to election date. So it's going to be moved up by 1 week if it passes. The same for judges who wish to be retained. They have to file their intention for retention 1 week up. So it was 3 months prior to the election date. If it passes, it'll be 3 months and 1 week. The third one, perhaps the big one here, is the ballot title publication. So right now, ballot titles need to be published in newspapers 15 days prior to the election. This proposal is to move that date up 30 days, so it'd be 45 days. Okay. All right. So this was put forward by the county clerks. We're needing some more time. And I think that there are really no cons that have been registered on this issues. No arguments against. Questions on K?
No questions on K.
Oh, on to Amendment 79. and that is the constitutional right to abortion. So it does two things. It places the right of abortion in the Constitution instead of just in state statute. And it repeals a ban on funding, which I'll explain in a minute. So in 2022, the Supreme Court Dobbs decision overturned Roe versus Wade, which was the right to abortion. So then the next year in 2023, the Colorado legislature passed a law creating the right to abortion in Colorado law. And this amendment would put that right into the Constitution for Colorado. Then on the funding, in 1984, voters narrowly passed a constitutional ban on funding for abortion for Medicaid recipients and for health insurance plans offered to state and local government workers. And those state and local government workers include thousands of teachers, police people, firemen, state government workers, municipal workers, all those. So this amendment would repeal that ban on funding, but it does not guarantee funding. That would then need to be, so once it's out of the Constitution, then the legislature or the various government bodies can determine whether they want abortion to be included in their employees' healthcare plans. So a pro is that abortion access would be protected in Colorado regardless of changing political climates. And another pro is Colorado's Constitution should not ban funding for healthcare services. Rather, policymakers should have the option to fund the care they believe residents need. And a con is it limits the ability of lawmakers to pass policies such as preventing late-term abortions. And another con is taxpayers should not be forced to pay for services to which they morally object. And by the way, this was a citizen initiative, and since it's an amendment, it requires 55%. Okay, so are there any questions on this one?
No questions on 79.
All right, we'll move on to Amendment 80, constitutional right to school choice. And this relates to K-12 education. It's a citizen initiative, requires 55% because it's changing the Constitution. So it creates a constitutional right to school choice. And that school choice is defined as public, private, homeschool, and any future innovations in education. So currently, under Colorado law, students may attend any public school for free, even if they do not live in the school district. And state law also permits parents to choose non-public schools, such as private schools or homeschools, but there's no funding for that. If this amendment passes, it does not result in any immediate change to state law. It just puts just guarantees the choice in the Constitution. But if it's in the Constitution, it may affect how the legislature makes policies about choice and funding, and there may be various court interpretations involved with people suing, saying that the state should be treating all school choices the same. In 2022 and 2023, in the legislative sessions, there were attempts made to fund private schools and homeschools with public funds. So a pro is constitutional amendment ensures the right of school choice cannot be taken away by future legislatures. And a con is the measure may conflict with current law prohibiting public funding for private education, requiring interpretation by the courts. And again, this was a citizen initiative and is an amendment, and so it requires 55% to pass. Any questions on Amendment 80?
Yep, somebody's wondering who sponsored this amendment and why.
Oh. Gee, I'm not positive. I'm pretty sure that I saw it was Advanced Colorado that sponsored it. I think that's the name. And I guess I don't know why. I mean, it seems like it might be an attempt to try and get public funding for private schools, but I don't know that it's stated publicly that way.
Some people say it's behind it is a group that's going kind of from state to state, but I don't know. Anyway, the other question for 80 is where does the funding come from for these new schools? That's what I guess what you started to talk about.
Well, so currently there is no additional funding required. So if this were to go into effect, then there could be arguments about, legal arguments about whether this now means that public funds would support private schools. So there's apt to be lawsuits about it. And so if it did happen that the lawsuits said that now all schools would need to be publicly funded, then that would take away from funding for public schools. Hope that made sense.
Okay, that's all. Just those two questions.
All right, thank you.
All right. So now we're on to the propositions, and the first one is JJ. And propositions pass with majority vote, not 55%. So this one proposes to retain additional sports betting tax revenue. So it's referred by the state legislature. And what it would do is it would allow the state to keep the taxes they collect above that which was initially approved and use those additional revenues to fund water projects. So if it fails, then the state has to continue. They are collecting more than they initially thought they would. They have to continue to give the overage back to the casinos and sports betting organizations. If it passes, then the state can keep the overage and they can use it for water projects. All right. So there is an organization for supporting this called Yes on JJ. And there is no opposition that I have seen. So that's JJ. All right, questions?
We have another question on 80.
That's fine.
Advanced Colorado is run by a handful of Republican legislators. Why were these issues not brought up in the legislature?
Okay, so they were brought up in the legislature in 2022 and 2023. They tried to pass something to have public funding for private schools, and it failed in the legislature. So it's probably a chance now to go to the voters and see if they'll pass it.
And then we have a question for Judy, to the people getting the on JJ, do they get to keep all of it? I guess the water project.
Oh, okay. If JJ, only the amount of taxes that is over that which was initially approved when they first set up the sports betting tax will go to the state. They don't get to keep all of it. They only get to keep the overage. It is estimated that in 2025, that would be 900,000. 2026, it would be 1.2 million. And in 2027, this is interesting, 2.75 million. If it fails, those amounts of money that I just stated would go to the casinos.
Okay, that's all for now. I mean,
All right, let's go on to KK. And this is about firearms and ammunition. So this is a proposed excise tax. It's referred by the state legislature. And what it does is it creates an excise tax of 6.5% to be paid by the dealers and manufacturers and vendors of guns and gun products. Okay. The state would use this money for victim services, for mental health services for youth and military folks, and for school safety programs. It is thought that gun dealers, if this passes, would likely add that tax onto their products. And so an argument for this is that federal funding for crime safety services is declining. COVID money has been used. COVID money is drying up. All right. The argument against is that those wishing to buy guns and ammunition, wanting to avoid this extra expense, if it's added on, will go outside the state to purchase what they need. Questions on KK or any other state ballot issue?
well, there's a question on JJ. So is JJ essentially an exception to Tabor?
Yes. Help me on this, Peggy, if I misspeak. Yes, it simply means that, yes, in fact, instead of returning it, but remember, it's not going back to taxpayers. It's going back to casinos and sports betting organizations.
Yeah, basically what happened was a few years ago, voters approved a tax on sports betting. And you know how those ballot measures always say, shall spending be, or shall revenue be increased by $29 million in the first year or whatever. And it's now gone over $29 million per year. So now it's okay. The difference now has not been approved by voters. So now this is asking voters to approve to just keep that extra for the water projects that it was originally approved for and not give it back to the casinos.
Okay, and there's nothing on KK, so. I mean, no question.
All right, we're 127.
All right, Proposition 127, Citizen Initiative. Prohibit bobcat, lynx, and mountain lion hunting. And currently, lynx hunting is already illegal, both federally and at the state level. Bobcat and mountain lion hunting are currently managed by the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission. And mountain lions are currently classified as big game. So landowners are eligible for state reimbursement if mountain lions cause any damage. So since this would no longer be big game, this would eliminate the reimbursement to landowners for damages by mountain lions. The pro is hunting causes the animals pain and trauma. These populations can naturally regulate themselves without the need for hunting. And a con is it restricts the ability of wildlife experts at CPW to make science-based decisions to achieve the state's ecological objectives. All right, any questions on Proposition 127?
No questions yet.
All right. Proposition 128. Parole eligibility for crimes of violence. And it increases the time served before they're eligible for parole to at least 85% of their sentence. Currently it's 75% minus earned time. So I'll just explain that parole is a system of community supervision of persons released from prison, and it involves conditions of employment, housing, or substance abuse. And then earned time, or as this slide talks about, reductions, that occurs while in prison as an incentive for progress toward personal, professional, or educational goals. And this can be by up to 10 or 12 days per month, depending on the plan and the behavior of the inmate. Currently, an estimated 220 persons per year are convicted of violent crimes, serving an average of 23 years. A pro is increase public safety and ensure that justice is served. And a con is it removes the opportunity for inmates to achieve earned time and less incentive to follow prison rules or rehabilitate themselves. So, questions on 128?
Not yet.
All right, we'll move on to Judy.
All right. So now we are on to Proposition 129. This proposes to create a veterinary professional associate. It's a citizen initiative. This would pass with a majority vote. What it would do, it would establish a master's degree program in veterinary care. Those that pass this program would need to work under the supervision of a vet. Graduates would be able to perform most veterinary functions, including most surgeries. So the argument for this is primarily supported by animal welfare groups, and their concern is that there's a shortage of vet care and that there's a shortage of affordable vet care, and that this could respond to that. The argument against it, and it's not supported by most veterinarians. They have an organization called Keep Our Pets Safe. And by the way, the pro organization, if you want to look it up, is All Pets Deserve Vet Care. The veterinarians are concerned about the new program in terms of the fact that it would diminish the quality of vet care. All right, so that's Proposition 129, Professional Veterinary Associate. Questions?
Not on 129. We have another question on, or a first question on 127, the hunting prohibition. The question is, does this really restrict CWP from managing wildlife? It seems to me it simply requires a new approach, assuming CWP's current solution is to permit big game hunting when animal populations are problematic.
While Peggy's unmuting,
Well,
just say
I'm
one
thinking
thing.
about that. Okay, so
There you go.
I guess I don't quite know what the answer would be.
You want me to read the question?
I think this proposal might actually allow hunting for problematic populations, but I'm just not sure about that.
Okay.
Now, I don't much understand this particular proposition.
Okay. So where were we? There's no questions yet on 128 or 129.
All right. 130. Proposition 130 is funding for law enforcement. This is a citizen initiative. So again, passes with a majority vote. Yeah, this, if it passes, creates a new fund of $350 million for a number of things related to officers, recruiting and hiring, training, increasing salaries, and a one-time death benefit for families of officers killed in the line of duty. This is not a new tax. This money would have to come out of the existing state budget. So the pro argument here is that not all local police departments have survivor benefits, although most do, and not all survivor benefits are equal. All right, so this would ensure that type of benefit for all. And the con argument is that the state would have to cut funding from other places in order to pay for this new program. Questions on 130? And if not, we'll go to what might be the most challenging one.
Yes, and that is Proposition 131, establishing all candidate primary and ranked choice voting general election. And this was a citizen initiative and requires a majority vote. So the primaries are the elections that are held in June. And currently, that is just Republicans and Democrats that have a primary in June. This would change that to be candidates from anybody that wants to run for the office would run in June. And then everybody can vote regardless of what party they're in. And then whoever the top four are from that primary in June, then they go to the general election in November. And the winner of that would be chosen by ranked choice voting. Okay, so it applies to races for U.S. Senator, U.S. Representative, Governor and Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State, State Treasurer, State Attorney General, State Board of Education, Regents of University of Colorado, and the state senators and state representatives in our legislature. So basically our federal offices and our state offices. It does not apply to the US president, which is a totally separate primary. It doesn't apply to district attorneys or to county offices, like county commissioner, county clerk. So, and then when it talks about once on this slide, once certain conditions in state law are met. So there's a condition that says that this can't take effect until at least 12 municipalities of varying sizes use ranked choice voting in Colorado, and they pass a state audit. And now if this proposition is passed, then the state legislature may readdress that provision and try and get this implemented by 2028 or so. Okay, so under this proposal, political parties would still pick candidates for the all candidate primary through their assembly process. So they can still refer, you know, like the Democrats can have a assembly and choose their candidates for the primary. Same with the Republicans. And then the and candidates can also get on by petitioning on. And then unaffiliated and minor party candidates will now compete in the all candidate primary instead of in the general election. So they need to compete earlier. On both the ballot, the primary ballot and the general election ballot, party designations would appear next to the candidates' names, including unaffiliated. So during the primary, voters will still receive ballots for district attorney and county offices the normal way, plus the all candidate ballot for the affected offices. All right, then the general election in November will have no more than 4 candidates, and that will be conducted using ranked choice voting. And so there's an example here of what your ballot would look like and how you would fill it out. Your first choice, second choice, third choice shows what party they're in. There is could be quite the possibility that there could be more than one candidate from the same party. And then the way these are tabulated is, I'm just going to give an example. Let's just say that candidate D is eliminated the first time. All right, so everybody who voted for candidate D as their first choice would then have their second choice applied. So in this case, on your ballot, let's assume this is your ballot, your first choice was C. So you're still in it. Okay. Then let's say that C is eliminated on the next round. Well, that was your first choice. All right, so now in the next round, your vote will go toward candidate B. And it continues that way until it's done, which, you know, there's only 3 rounds because there's only 4 candidates. So a little complicated, but hope everybody understood that. And so the pros, all candidate primary gives voters equal opportunity to decide who will be on the November ballot. And another pro, the ranking in the general election allows voters more choice to express their voting preferences. And a con is the new election system is complex and expensive, and voters will have to vote in 2 different systems and receive multiple ballots. And another con is political parties play an important role in our system and should have their own primary elections to select candidates who reflect their beliefs. Okay, are there questions on this one?
I guess my question is, the presidential primary is also in June. So what you just said was we would get a presidential primary ballot, and then we'd get a separate one for the rest of the.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the question is, but the presidential one is in March. And this isn't going to change that at all. It's only changing the June one, which is for the state and federal offices except president. And then it changes the general election to be ranked choice.
And we have a question: how many areas in Colorado have ranked choice voting now, besides Boulder?
All right, yes, Boulder does for the mayor. They just implemented that last year. And I believe Fort Collins has authorized it now. I'm pretty sure, yes, I'm sure that Broomfield has authorized it. And I'm not sure if there's more.
And we have a very nice thank you. It's not a question. Thank you for this session, and thanks for our history of advocating for people and their right to vote. So I guess the answer to that is you're welcome.
Thank you for being an informed voter.
Yeah.
And I do have one more to cover, which is the RTD ballot measure 7A. And that is basically a Tabor waiver. So in 1999, voters exempted RTD from Tabor refunds through the period required to pay bond debt for certain light rail lines. And that debt will expire in 2024. So this measure allows RTD to keep all of their revenue being collected from taxes, fares, and grants, and it won't be raising any taxes or lowering any taxes. If it were to fail, then RTD would need to cut its sales tax rate or rebate the revenue to citizens, similar to the way the state does Tabor refunds. So a pro will allow RTD to keep and expand mass transit options, plus maintain current levels of bus and rail services. And a con is ridership is way down. The current level of spending is no longer needed. All right, any questions on RTD?
No questions yet.
All right, I'll pass it on to Linda.
Hello. The St. Vrain Valley School District Board is asking voters to approve a $739.8 million capital construction bond issue. Now, St. Vrain Valley School District is basically northern Boulder County and some areas adjacent in western Weld. Okay, just for that. The mill levy will not increase. The additional revenue would come from increased property values. In other words, housing assessments are going up and growth. The planned projects include 5 new buildings. 3 would be new schools to handle the expected enrollment growth over the next 10 years in the Carbon Valley, Erie, and Meade areas, including a new high school in Frederick, a second career and technical education center on the same property in Frederick, a new pre-K through 8 school in Meade, then the other 2 would be a new elementary school in Erie, and a new building for St. Vrain Community Montessori, which is a K through 8 charter school located in Longmont. In addition, the proposal includes money for maintenance, repairs, and safety improvements at the district's existing schools, as well as additional classrooms, including an expansion of Longmont's Innovation Center, which offers STEM programs to students district-wide. The district plans to replace outdated electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems and repair or replace some roofs. Safety improvements include upgrades to doors, windows, and vestibules, upgrades to cameras, intercoms, and first responder radio coverage, and upgrades to fire alarms and suppression systems. A vote yes means the money will be borrowed, the proposed buildings will be built, and the proposed maintenance will be done as long as funds are available. A no vote means the money will not be borrowed, the projects will not be undertaken. Erie, the background for this is that Erie High School is over capacity, and the middle level grades at Soaring Heights pre-K through 8 in Erie are also over capacity. Erie Middle School is nearing capacity. Several other St. Vrain schools are expected to reach at least 100%, 110% of capacity in 5 years, including Meade Elementary, Meade Middle School, and Longmont's Prairie Ridge Elementary. St. Vrain Valley School District paid some of its existing bond debt early, reducing its total debt amount. Voters in St. Vrain Valley School District last passed a bond issue in 2016. Those in favor, in other words, a pro, remarks are the best economic development tool in any community's toolbox is a strong school system. And the St. Vrain Valley School District is wisely investing in alternative education, such as the Technical Education Center and the Montessori School. Those opposed, con, say, housing assessments are going up, taxes will increase anyway, even without a rate increase. Does anyone have any questions?
No questions yet.
Oh,
So we'll go on to City of Longmont. Longmont has one issue this year called 3A. And this asks voters to approve an extension of the existing sales and use tax that's earmarked for the city's open space program. The tax would remain in place indefinitely. There's no sunset, no end date. The tax rate is expressed in an unusual way as 0.2 of a cent. It's very small. It translates to 0.002%, three decimal places, 2 cents on a $10 purchase. The tax dates from the year 2000, and then in 2007, voters approved extending it to 2034. And of course, that's still 10 years away, but the city would like to be assured of revenues farther into the future. Then it can do more long-term planning and budgeting and launch new projects. The vote will also indicate to City Council the level of community support for open space. And also this year, issue 3A is the only proposal on the city ballot, so voters can focus on it. And then if the issue fails, the council has time before 2034 to build more support and try again. The open space tax revenue is devoted to the preservation of natural areas, wildlife habitat, wetlands, and agriculture. It is also used to provide and maintain access to usable open space. For example, the funds have been used for trails and amenities around Lake McIntosh, the Dickens Farm and River Nature area, improvements at Jim Ham Park, improvements at Sandstone Ranch and McCall Lake. They've been used for the Spring Gulch Trail and for education programs, environmental education and fishing education, and for extension of the St. Vrain Greenway. That's been a long-term project. So those in favor of 3A say, this is not a tax increase, it just extends an existing tax and removes the sunset provision. And extending the tax indefinitely now ensures that resources are available in the future, and that allows more long-term planning and budgeting. Some projects take a decade or more. Also, Longmont's open space enhances our quality of life. It provides a buffer between Longmont and surrounding towns, and it creates view corridors. If the current open space tax is allowed to lapse in 2034, funding for maintenance and a sustainable future will need to come from the city's general fund. some opposition. In our research, we found a complaint that this does not result in lowering our taxes. And then when our county Tabor notice came out, you all know that. There were a couple more. One opposition argument is that the county is already collecting 0.475% for open space, and those taxes have an expiration date. So there's no need to make Longmont's permanent and to extend it 10 years ahead of time. Another opposition argument is that Longmont shouldn't add an open space tax to the county's 0.475%. Our committee notes that that with Longmont, it's only 0.477%, and county open space areas are different from Longmont's open space areas. But these are valid opposition arguments. Any questions on, oh, I'm not supposed to, any questions on Longmont?
None so far.
So, well, I'll call on Judy to wrap us up with the town of Erie.
All right. So the town of Erie has just one question on the ballot. It's a retail marijuana tax. This is referred by the Erie Town Council, formerly known as the Town Board of Trustees. This question asks Erie residents to vote for or against imposing a 5% excise tax on the retail sale of marijuana, both recreational and medical. The 5% is it's the common tax rate in municipalities in Colorado where marijuana sales are permitted. So if this is approved, then the town's moratorium on marijuana sales, that is the marijuana sale in Erie, will end as of January 1st, 2025. And this would allow for up to 2 retail marijuana stores in the town. Marijuana testing, delivery, cultivation, and manufacturing will continue to be prohibited in the town. So, by way of background, perhaps we all remember that Amendment 64 passed in Colorado in 2012, essentially decriminalizing marijuana sales in the state beginning in 2013. At that time, the Erie Town Council, the board, chose not to permit the sale of marijuana, medical or otherwise, in Erie. In 2016, they formed a retail marijuana ad hoc committee to study that question, whether they should prohibit it or to permit it. They decided in 2017, given that ad hoc committee's recommendations, to continue to prohibit the sale of marijuana. In 2021, the issue came up again, and there was a community survey, and at that time, 59% of the residents indicated that they strongly or somewhat supported ending the moratorium on the retail marijuana sale. The town council decided that they would resolve all home rule, the home rule question and all the issues around home rule first. So it came up again in 2023. And in that survey, 67% of the residents strongly or somewhat supported ending the moratorium. So thus in 2024, the council voted to put it on the ballot. All right, that is the Erie question. Any questions about that one?
No questions.
Are there any questions about anything that we've covered so far?
I'd like to mention as an Erie resident myself on the Boulder County side, on the Weld County side of Erie, those voters were also, I think, are going to be voting on the annexation to lap onto the RTD. So, and if there's any confusion by anybody, we're just focusing on the Boulder County side of Erie as far as what we're presenting today, but there is that other additional issue before Erie voters.
Interesting.
I think we're ready to wrap it up, but is that okay? Okay, to conclude this presentation, I would like to thank Judy, Peggy, Linda, and Deborah for their dedicated work in supporting voters and their preparations for today's forum. A huge thank you also goes out to our 2024 Platinum level election sponsors, Premier Members Credit Union, and Wana Brands. Please note, a video recording of this presentation will be available on the League of Women Voters of Boulder County website, lwvbc.org, and the League's YouTube channel in the coming days. The presentation will also be available on the League's online voters guide, vote411.org, where voters can find information on candidates, candidate responses to questions curated by the League, and information on other ballot issues. And finally, I would like to thank you, the viewer of this presentation. As a League member, I'd like to stress the importance that elections are our chance to stand up for what matters most to us and to have an impact on the issues that affect us, especially issues impacting our communities, our families, our loved ones, and our future. The League of Women Voters believes in empowering you, the voter, with straightforward information so your voice will be heard. Thank you for attending this presentation and being an informed voter. Again, thank you, everyone. This concludes our presentation.